Today I'm with the author of this book and its accompanying almanac, Complete Lakeland Fells. And the author is Bill Birkett. Hello there, Bill.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks. It's a pleasure to meet you, Bill.
Thanks.
Well, for the purposes of this interview, I thought it'd be quite nice to sort of talk about your life based in the Lake District and obviously what you do. And I know you're an author of, is it around 30 odd books at the moment?
Yeah, I guess it is, yeah.
Well, before we start delving into that and sort of concentrating perhaps on the Complete Lakeland Fells, it'd be quite nice to lay a little bit of background information about you. Now, I know you were born in the lakes.
Uh-huh.
Whereabout?
Well, I was born here in this in Little Langdale, in Daleview, where I live now. So I'm a sort of bred and born local. My dad was a quarryman at a nearby quarry. So yeah.
Now, I know you mentioned Little Langdale. Well, we're actually in your back garden, aren't we, at the moment?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your father. Now, his name Jim?
Jim Birkett, yeah.
Now, in his time, he was quite a renowned climber, wasn't he?
Oh yes, and he was a leading rock climber in Britain, I think, in his day, 1930s to 40s. And yeah, he pioneered some really hard routes up to what probably rate as extreme today, but all with minimal gear, of course. You know, nail boots and gym shoes and rubber-soled kind of just pumps, really. But the protection really was non-existent. All the hard ropes, they were very, they were thin hemp ropes, and they weren't very strong or reliable.
Now, you mentioned climbing up to sort of extreme grade. Am I correct in saying he was the first climber to set up an E-grade within the lakes?
Well, they didn't have E-grades then, but now some of his routes are graded extreme. There's always an argument about which was the first extreme, but I think the truth of the matter is that the routes that Jim, my dad, was doing were, up to really, really extremely hard. There's one route which on East Butters of Score Fell, it's called Mayday Climb, and I think it's graded E1 now, but it's probably, in modern grading, it's probably E2, sort of 5C technically, and the other routes of that time were sort of VS and using pitons for aid at that grade, so it was kind of a route that was light years ahead of its time, and yeah.
Was he climbing throughout the lakes, or did he just concentrate in certain areas?
Oh, he went all over climbing. I mean, all over Britain, certainly Wales, which is a favourite area, and lots in Scotland, and we climbed in the Lofoten Islands, and there was a big newspaper article coming with that. He did a very fast ascent. I think he did a one-day ascent of a big face that had previously taken days to climb. So he climbed all over.
Now, of course, in your day, and no doubt you still are, you're quite a proficient climber as well, aren't you?
Well, climbing's been my lifelong passion, and I still love it. I still get the same buzz when I get out on the rock. It's just unbelievable, really, and thankfully that's still there. It's never gone away. It's never waned. The performance is somewhat lacking now, but it doesn't matter. I just love to be out on the rock. It's just great.
Did that come out of contact with your father, Jim, or was it your peer group at the time?
I don't know, really. I mean, it's all strange, but my dad was an extremely kind of modest man, and by the time I came along, he'd actually stopped rock climbing. Although he kind of led his period in terms of development, he only climbed for a decade. And when I was born, he'd actually stopped rock climbing. So we went out together, loads on the fells together, and in the Scottish mountains and round Wales, out walking. And his big speciality was birds of prey, peregrines, eagles, all the rest of it. And that was his passion. And plants, rare plants, mountain plants. So I was very much involved in that. We're out certainly every weekend, but quite often in the lakes we'd go out in an evening. If it was a summer's evening, we'd be out, and sometimes even we'd go out in the morning before we went to work. It was all about the mountains. It was great, really. But we didn't go climbing, and I actually started rock climbing with a friend from school called Ronnie Black, and we must have been about 13 or maybe 14, and it was only afterwards that seems unbelievable. But Mum said, "Oh yeah, your dad does a bit of climbing. He's done a bit of climbing." And he said, "Have a look at that." And one of the bookshelves there was loads of Fell and Rock guidebooks, and I opened up the Score Fell book, and it was just like page after page, first ascent Jim Birkett, and that's the first time I knew he was a climber. He'd never spoke to me about it at all. So there you are.
How young would you be then?
Oh,
Jim?
well, I was 13, 14. I can't remember. Probably just getting on late 13 when I started climbing.
And what about nowadays, Bill? How often do you get out climbing?
Oh, pretty often. When injuries allow. I had a series of injuries, but yeah, I've been climbing every weekend for the last few weeks, and I was out in France at April. So yeah, I still do quite a bit, really.
But of course, as well as climbing, you do quite a bit of hill walking as well.
I do, yeah. I get out on the hills pretty often. I've just had 3 intense days actually of doing a couple of walks a day just for my next book. So yeah, the weather's been so good. I've been having to get out.
As far as the joy that climbing and hill walking gives you, Bill, do you separate them at all, or do you think it's all one and the same?
I think it's quite different, really. I mean, and within that, I mean, climbing has meant so many different things to me. You know, it's so many. Just the climbing alone has got so many different elements. One is the actual climbing, and you know when you're young, and even now in a way, you know, you can be very competitive. And it's about that kind of thing, that internal thing that you drive yourself forward. But another element to climbing is just being out in natural beauty, and that's another huge thing, and they're quite different. Another element of climbing, 3 big elements for me, is the kind of the people you're with, you know, the friends that you're with, and that's a huge thing. You know, sometimes you just go out and with a couple of friends, or even a single friend. In fact, one of the lads I first started climbing when I was 14, along with Ronnie Black, was a chap called Jeremy Sheen. He now lives in Sweden, and it was just great. We did some easy climbs together, and but most of the day we were just talking about you know, things that interest us and all the rest of it. So that's another big element, you know, the friendship thing. So within climbing there's those 3 strains, and yeah, I've always kind of in my mind I separate kind of the walking from the climbing, in so much as that my Complete Lakeland Fells book here is all about doing the tops over 1,000 feet. And it feels quite different to going off and doing a climb, really.
Now, as far as coming on to the hill walking aspect, well, you mentioned before that you're born, bred, grew up, and you still do live around the Langdale area, and obviously within the Lake District National Park. Stunningly beautiful area. But with the fells being on your doorstep when you were so young, did you used to go out onto them then, or is it more in sort of later years that the true sort of love for hill walking has come about?
Well, I always, you know, like I say, I was out with my dad all the time. We're always out in the mountains walking, and usually it was a purpose of, you know, looking for a certain nest, an eagle or a peregrine falcon or whatever, or a rare flower. Quite often we'd go out and we'd be out, you know, say a big day on the hills, and we'd never go over a top, we'd never go over the summit. We were going to, you know, we'd be off path, we'd be looking at crags, we'd be looking at all sorts of things, and we, you know, our object wasn't to get to the top. That was the last consideration. We weren't bothered about the tops, it was just being out on the hills. But yeah, I've always had a passion to get out there. I remember when I was just probably 9 or something, and Wetherlam is the nearest mountain to here, and I remember it being really snow covered, and I just set off one afternoon quite late, and got up there, and it was going dark, and suddenly it was a kind of a whiteout situation. A blizzard developed, and even though it was only, you know, half a mile away from my home, it was suddenly a really serious kind of serious mountain experience. So yeah, I've always gone out in the hills. Now,
as far as career-wise, Jim, I know you were qualified. Is it a civil engineer?
I'm a chartered civil engineer. Yeah,
yeah.
I used to work for the county highways at Kendal, and I still do a bit of engineering. Recently, following the floods, I've been doing structural inspections of bridges, bridge foundations for when they're in the water and things, and just checking those out. So, I still do a little bit of engineering. I enjoy it.
But that, of course, it's obviously quite a major career step to come to what you are doing now and what you've been doing for quite a number of years.
That's right. 1985, I packed my full-time job in engineering, and it's not that I didn't like it. We worked. It's all gone now, but we worked in Kendal, County Highways in Kendal, which is now it's all been dispersed and all the rest of it. But it was great. We were a good group of people, and we enjoyed the work we were doing. But I always had this massive passion for photography, climbing, walking, but photography as well. And I was given the opportunity really to take it on. I started writing a few articles. We did 79. We did the first winter climbs guide to the Lake District. And then after that, work kept coming up. People were phoning me up and asking for articles and all the rest of it. So it just went on from there. I was in a kind of position where I got to a point where I thought, well, maybe I could do this full time. So because it was my real passion, I kind of stepped into that. So people say, isn't it a big break? And it was all driven by passion. Now, so I suppose if you were logical about it and think, well, I won't have a pension, I won't get the salary, you probably wouldn't do it. But because you love something so much, you go ahead and do it. That was my reasoning.
Now, some of the books that I know you for is the first one that we will concentrate on in a few minutes, and that's the Complete Lakeland Fells.
Uh-huh.
But also it's a series of beautiful books that have been produced, and it's a year in the...
Oh, a year in the life series of photographic books. Yeah, well, I've done those to Skye, Snowdonia, Glencoe. That's just been reprinted, actually. And, of course, Langdale, the Duddon Valley, Borrowdale. And, that was really good. Again, it was almost... Well, it was by chance, really. I'd fallen out with one publisher and had done with it, really, books. And then the phone went, and Francis Lincoln, and they said... Would you do a photographic book on the Langdales? So I said, well, I'm not too sure really. So we had a meeting next door, the Three Shires Inn, and it was like a dream come true, really. I mean, just to do a photographic book on your home environment, it was wonderful. But I wanted the book to be more. There's lots of fantastic books of photographs, absolutely wonderful. But I wanted it to be more than that. I wanted to tell something about the local history, my involvement with it. With the landscape and all the rest of it. So I talked from everything from the stone axes right the way through to modern times, and the captions in the book are really quite extensive and tell their own story. So I think it's more than just a book of pretty photographs. It's a bit of a story as well, and it's some of my knowledge in the book.
And they've won prizes as well, haven't they?
Oh,
that
yes,
series?
yeah, they have, yeah. Won a few prizes. That won the Outdoor Writers Guild Best Book of the Year award. There's been won various awards with the Lakeland Book of the Year awards. So yeah.
Well, that's the year in the life of. Well, if we come on to the Complete Lakeland Fells, first of all, congratulations, because it's quite a stunning book.
Oh, thank you.
And also to take out on the hill, you've got the accessibility of the Lakeland Fells in almanac form as well. Now, as far as the Complete Lakeland Fells is concerned, Bill, if we can now concentrate on that for a good few minutes. Is it 541 fells that you list?
It is, yeah, I think, yeah.
And all over 1,000 foot?
That's right, that's correct, yeah.
So how did the origins of that book arise? Was it in your mind or something that you approached via a publisher?
Well, again, I approached HarperCollins with a book. I wanted to do a photographic book on the mountains. And they said they weren't interested in that, but they would like a general book on the walking in the Lake District. So I was probably stood here now, and I was thinking, well, there is hundreds of books on the walking in the Lake District, so what to do? And then I thought, well, what would I really like to do? And I always thought, as a kid, there was no one book about the fells. If I could have got a book about the whole of the Lakeland Fells, with good information, I would have got that book, but there wasn't nothing at all. Wainwright came in 8 volumes or whatever, and I suddenly thought, well, if there was a book that told you all the fell tops over 1,000 feet, that's a book I would really want. So then I passed the idea back to HarperCollins, and they took it right away, and that was the result, Complete Lakeland Fells.
So when did you start working on it? What year?
Gosh, it's hard to say, because it's a lifetime's knowledge and experience, really. It's like I think it was published in 1994, so it's based on 30 odd years of walking the fells anyway. But actually hands-on to do it, produce it, even though it was all pretty much in my mind, it was probably about 2 years. All the routes had to be reworked and re-photographed. Things had to be checked, and so it's probably 2 working years to get it out.
As far as the publishing group is concerned, was there much editing with it at all, Bill, or not? Or did they generally accept what was produced and handed to them?
No, Complete Lakeland Fells was pretty good, really. I had a very good editor, Tom Whiting, and he pretty well worked with me, apart from a few grammatical kind of corrections. It pretty well went through as I wanted it to. There was no problems. I mean, in the past with other publishers, you get some editor who thinks they know best, and it can be extremely frustrating. But with Complete Lakeland Fells, it pretty well went through as it was.
What about the selection of photographs? Was that easy for you or not?
Well, again, it's quite difficult, but I must take my hat off to Tom and HarperCollins team. I went down to London theoretically for an afternoon to sort out the photographs in the book, make the final selection, and I was there, I think, for 4 days working with them, to get it as I wanted it to be photographically. So that was marvellous. I had a big say in that. That was tremendous.
Now, as far as the actual selection of the fells, Bill, again, firstly, why 1,000 foot?
Well, it just seemed, there's a lot of lesser hills below that, but it just seemed the number where a fell became a real fell, I mean, it's just a feeling, but that's how it felt.
Were you tempted with using any other form of criterion at all or not, or just keeping it to that?
Well, I just, 1,000 foot, just in those days, whatever it is in metres now, it just felt like it had to be a fell. It's just a feeling, and so that's what it was based on. Again, it was kind of a passion, rather than a mathematical kind of formula. It was what I felt, and even though if you read the book, there's quite detailed kind of layout of what the criterion was, but if you apply that criterion really rigidly, some things that are definitely not fells would go in, and other things that don't fit the criterion are definitely fells. So in my mind, worthy tops in my mind. So in the end, I kind of applied my logic to it, and the selection was based on what I thought should be in.
Now, you mentioned Wainwright before as well, and I know some of Wainwright's fells in his pictorial guides aren't necessarily the summit of the hill. It's possibly a good viewing point.
That's right.
Would that be the same for you, Bill, that you don't always include the highest point of each fell that you select?
Yes,
or?
I mean, when you get a ridge, say, with numerous tops on, and some of them, historically, because of viewpoints and because of people's perception, even though you're going up a ridge to the highest point, they're considered to be separate fells. But they are below, they're on a ridge, and they are below the main mountain. But, they are definitely fells. So even though you can apply all the rules to it, you can't miss them out because everybody thinks of them as fells.
Yeah. Were you tempted to include any under 1,000 foot?
Well, no. That was a kind of rule I gave myself. I mean, there's lots of fantastic hills below 1,000 feet, but I saw that as a separate kind of thing, really. And I suppose I've still got to do that book.
Now, here's a good question for you, Bill. 541 fells within the book. If I were to ask you, give me about 5 or 6 of your favourites, what would they be?
Well, it's impossible really to say because, every day is a different day on the fells. The light is always different. Photographically, it's just amazing. But I say this when I'm doing my photo courses, that it's all about light really, and you never get the same light ever again. It's not, it's just a unique moment of time. So every time I go out, it's different and a different experience. So it's probably my favourite fell is the fell on that particular day.
Yeah. Now, I asked you a couple of minutes ago about the selection of photographs. What about the actual selection of fells, though? Because obviously you were restricting yourself to that 1,000-foot
Yeah.
mark, but
Yeah.
what about others?
Well, beyond that, it's again, it's a kind of a personal thing, really. I applied the rules, but then I kind of bent the rules to fit what I thought were fells, and that's it. And you could say, well, what about so and so? And there are a number of tops which are borderline. I'm about to do a new series of guidebooks for Complete Lakeland Fells, and then a new big reference book, and there may well be some new tops in there. I haven't decided yet, but for instance, one top which people can ponder about is on Deep Gill Buttress on Score Fell, and it's a really, I think it's called, I can't remember the name, it's given on the map, but locals and climbers don't call that. We know it's Deep Gill Buttress, and it's kind of an independent top above the Score Fell crags, and maybe that should be in. I don't know. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about.
Well, you've grabbed my next question, Bill, because that was going to be, well, it can still be, actually. It's around 17, 18 odd years now since the book first came out. And the question is, with hindsight, would you have put any other fells in it?
Well, I don't. I've just mentioned that particular one. So that's one, but there's a handful of fells which I've got to reconsider. There's probably about 5 that I'm thinking about, and they are kind of worthy, but because it was Complete Lakeland Fells, I'm kind of feel worried about adding things like the Munros have constantly been added to, and but I don't want people to feel that they've done all the Complete Lakeland Fells and suddenly there's some more and they kind of they haven't done them.
Why not, Bill? Go on.
Well, okay, I might in the new series. There's about 5 under consideration that I may put in.
Well, as far as the 541 fells are concerned, I know people refer to them as the Birketts now, don't they? So that's quite an honour for you.
Oh, yeah.
A series of hills to be named after you. But any chance of an exclusive? The 4 or 5 fells that you're thinking of adding into the Birkett listing. You mentioned the one.
Yeah.
What about the others?
Oh gosh, you've caught me off guard really. I need to, because my head's in so many places, I'd have to go and look at my notes. But yeah, I have no comment at this stage.
Well, that's the Complete Lakeland Fells, Bill, and I'd highly recommend it to anybody. It really is quite an achievement.
Super,
and a labour of love. What are you working on now?
Well, I've just started my own publishing company, and I'm producing a series of guidebooks. This is Walk the Langdells and Walk Ambleside, Rail and Grasmere, and 20 walks in each to go from the high tops right the way down to lakeside walks. Here's a great Vangdale Valley bottom one. Let's get a mountainous one if we can. Here's Langdale Pikes by Stickletown. So you've got everything on a double page spread, lovely map, fact sheet, description, as many photographs as I can cram in. It folds back like that, spine, so you can, it's always on that page, so you can shove it in the pocket of your rucksack and you can pull it out and you've still got a reference to the walk. So that's the kind of thing. And the next one due out just before Christmas is Walk Windermere and Hawkshead. And there we go. But I'm also starting work with Francis Lincoln on a series of guidebooks for Complete Lakeland Fells, and that's another project that I'm starting.
Now, what you've just showed the viewer, you mentioned that self-publishing, so that's something different you're now going into, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, I suppose it is. It's a new venture. Well, this one's been out, it's just been reprinted actually. It's sold extremely well. That came out about a year ago. But it's exciting because I do all the everything myself, and I do the layout, and yeah, it's all on the check myself, and also I kind of there's a very limited amount of advertising in, but it's kind of targeted at also being useful information. So there's one here for the Coniston Brewery nearby, but there's also Brambles Cafe, above the co-op in Great Langdale, and there's opening times, and there's information in there, and the hotels as well, the old Dungeon Gill, the Stickle Barn. They've been very supportive, really. So that's a wonderful thing. They've helped me police them.
Well, I look forward to seeing those in bookshops, Bill, in the future. So thanks for pointing those out. So what about Bill Birkett and his life in the lakes? Do you think you'll ever move from the area or not? Or?
Well, I hope I don't have to. It's very difficult financially to unless you're don't want to be controversial, but unless you're farming and you get grants, it's a difficult place to live. It's very expensive. It's a home of lots of people, and why not come into the area? They can afford to buy houses and all the rest of it. And but for local people who aren't farmers, the truth is it's a mighty struggle to try and survive financially, and it's a real problem which I don't know what the answer is. But so ideally, I'll be here until they carry me out, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, I'm sure that'll be a few more years yet, Bill. Well, it's been a delight to meet you today, Bill, and many thanks for giving up your time. And Bill Birkett, many thanks.
Oh, thank you.